The late monarch sat on the throne for a very extended era, and whilst one always anticipates the inevitable transition, the stark reality of it rarely occupies the mind until it strikes. Nobody dares to utter a word of dissent against the sovereign, yet an icy paralysis grips the room whenever Queen Camilla glides past, a senior courtier noted privately. The collective desire to behold a figure who flawlessly embodies the nation's core values remains paramount in the public consciousness. However, following years of relentless friction, her silent banishment from the private inner circles of Windsor Castle appears to have solidified into an undeniable truth. Princess Anne has purportedly drafted a merciless internal memorandum that severely curtails the Queen's involvement in traditional patronages, triggering this covert isolation. Although she has refrained from shouting her disdain in public squares, an undeniable chill at the mid-April 2026 Diana Awards proved that Princess Kate Middleton harbours an identical frosty stance. She looked right through her. An insider whispered, recalling how the princess deliberately turned her back to converse with another guest as the Queen approached. So, how precisely did the firm deteriorate to such a suffocating juncture, and what formidable orchestrations are Princess Anne and Kate conducting behind those heavily gilded doors? Delve with us into the leaked revelations originating from the Green Drawing Room, uncovering the stifling animosity that has effectively sidelined Queen Camilla. The illustrious institution is far from the flawless fairy tale so frequently projected upon the cinematic screen. Beyond the flashing lenses, highly coordinated emergency meetings take place at midnight, with the rapid clatter of aides' heels echoing down marble corridors to safeguard their fragile facade. The Windsors are constantly forced to meticulously weigh their deepest personal grievances against their unyielding obligations to the ancient crown. Ruthless publications like Tatler and the digital royal pages of the Daily Mail monitor their every breath, ensuring that the slightest tremor of a lip is mercilessly dissected. This suffocating pressure to maintain domestic unity while serving the British populace routinely breeds profound psychological challenges, inevitably igniting severe familial warfare. These fierce, clandestine skirmishes stand in stark contrast to the perfectly curated elegance presented to the Commonwealth. Presently, it is abundantly clear that the senior princesses are locked in a bitter, unyielding Cold War against Queen Camilla. Princess Anne undeniably spearheads this entire aristocratic mutiny. Recently, a conversation leaked from the Green Drawing Room revealed her categorical refusal to raise a glass in a toast to the Queen's health. "I shall not drink to a ruinous charade," she was allegedly heard remarking, her tone as bitter as the impossibly strong, sugarless Earl Grey she consumes over mountains of paperwork. Fundamentally, the Princess Royal remains thoroughly convinced that Queen Camilla is woefully unsuited to sit beside King Charles III on the throne. This unwavering prejudice stems directly from the shadows of more than 4 dark decades, when the King engaged in an illicit romance whilst the beloved Princess of Wales was still alive. But could the current outrage merely be a dramatic repetition of historical misdeeds? The royal archives are undeniably saturated with similar betrayals, most notably King Edward VIII, sacrificing an empire for the twice-divorced Wallis Simpson, or the myriad of powerful mistresses who manipulated King Charles II from the shadows. Therefore, one can confidently assert that scarcely any member of the ruling bloodline possesses a truly unblemished history. Why, then, is Princess Anne's ferocious condemnation of this particular queen so uniquely unshakable within the palace confines? Before dissecting that specific animosity, one must fully grasp the complex, treacherous landscape of the contemporary monarchy. You must understand that whilst they project a flawlessly modernised image to the masses, their shared history is fundamentally anchored in dark truths and perpetual struggles for absolute dominance. Their astonishing ability to project a serene, untroubled facade while standing upon a precipice is precisely what enthralls millions of observers worldwide. The theatrics enveloping the British monarchy are certainly not a modern invention. They have been deeply entrenched for countless generations. From vicious ancestral rivalries and scandalous bedroom affairs to quiet acts of treason and concealed vendettas, their bloodline has survived it all. Nevertheless, this current toxic chapter unfolding in the spring of 2026 is a catastrophe that the firm's most seasoned courtiers could never have anticipated. At the absolute core of this explosive modern controversy stand King Charles III, Queen Camilla, the heirs, and practically the entirety of the senior establishment. Their every subtle movement is scrutinised with forensic precision by an insatiable global audience. From their highly choreographed balcony appearances to the most fleeting glacial glances exchanged across a banquet hall, each micro-expression is ruthlessly decoded for evidence of internal decay. This relentless, unforgiving surveillance has ignited a perpetual whirlwind of paranoia, breeding wild theories regarding shifting allegiances, ancient grudges, and bitter power grabs occurring behind closed doors. The global appetite for their domestic tragedy is incredibly ravenous, and the courtiers are painfully cognizant of this vulnerability. Consequently, they have spent the last century meticulously sculpting and protecting a nearly impenetrable public veneer. Yet, regardless of how spectacularly the crown jewels shine, the reality within Kensington Palace is fundamentally fractured and far from pristine. It is entirely accurate to state that the foundational fault lines became glaringly obvious following Queen Camilla's astonishing elevation from a deeply controversial mistress to a crowned figurehead. Her steady ascent did not merely fracture the loyalty of the British public. It seeded a profound, silent fury amongst the very individuals she now calls family. This lingering resentment over a patched-up marriage from nearly 2 decades ago acts as the toxic epicenter of the crisis we are witnessing today. King Charles III often spends his sleepless nights staring into the fireplace at Kensington Palace, nursing a solitary ice-cold dry martini as the weight of this fractured family presses upon him. Adding highly combustible fuel to an already suffocating environment are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Their initial explosive departure from official royal duties has only been magnified by a shocking, exclusive CBS interview broadcast in early 2026. Furthermore, the devastating leak of furious personal emails between the Sussexes and senior royal advisors right on the eve of the Diana Awards has further intensified the chaos. The global fascination with the royals and their latest interviews, frequently critical of the firm, merely complicate the institution's efforts to maintain its pristine image. Outside the palace walls, the clicking of heels on cold marble signifies another emergency midnight meeting as aides scramble to suppress the latest leaked Sussex emails. Notwithstanding the royal family's capacity to preserve an outwardly unified front, friction is certainly no stranger to them. However, what we are observing today appears significantly deeper than the standard royal tensions of the past. In the green drawing room, Princess Anne sat surrounded by piles of documents, her tea, a dangerously strong, sugarless Earl Grey, cooling as she stared at the fire. What once appeared like typical family disagreements has escalated into a much more profound and consequential issue. The situation is now something that could potentially reconfigure the royal family as we currently know it. "The institution cannot survive this rot," she muttered to the shadows, her voice tight with cold fury. At the very heart of this escalating conflict stands Princess Anne. Reportedly, she has made a startling revelation about Camilla, identifying her as one of the primary threats to the royal system. This disclosure has forced the monarchy to re-evaluate Camilla's standing within the current system. Therefore, they have reached a conclusion to effectively distance her from the royal family's core. The present situation at Windsor is anything but straightforward, with numerous volatile outcomes looming on the horizon. Across the hall, King Charles III nursed a cold, dry martini at the Kensington Palace fireplace, the weight of his crown feeling heavier than ever. Even those observing from the exterior struggle to follow the incredibly rapidly unfolding events. It has become increasingly evident that within the royal family, there are members who may not entirely support or respect Camilla's role as Queen Consort. Despite the family's curated public image, friction regarding her rank has started to surface, causing intense speculation about the future of the monarchy and the internal dynamics. From historical accounts, Princess Anne and Princess Kate Middleton are considered more peaceful and duty-conscious members of the royal family. While Anne spends the majority of her time fulfilling royal duties, Kate is viewed as the most stable presence in the house and rarely engages in public controversy. So, how exactly did this duo come to influence Camilla's welfare within the palace? This is the specific part where events start to become truly interesting. "She will never be one of us," Anne had remarked during a leaked mid-April meeting, her eyes like flint. When scrutinising the relationships within the palace, you can clearly see that Camilla and Princess Anne aren't exactly the closest of associates. In fact, it is not just Camilla. Princess Anne's rigid beliefs and no-nonsense attitude often make it difficult for her to form intimate bonds within the family. Her unwavering principles and commitment to service have guided her throughout her royal career, and it is this dedication that has secured her a respected position in the firm. Due to her stoic approach, every member acknowledges her contributions and grants her the respect she has rightfully earned over the years. But then the issue is that while Anne's approach towards her duties has been admirable, she has proven herself to be an extremist regarding the affairs of the monarch. That being said, Princess Anne is perpetually determined to remove any obstacle that might pose a risk to the royal family. Princess Anne has voiced strong reservations about Queen Camilla's position and her suitability as Queen Consort. She revealed grave concerns about Camilla's influence over King Charles III and her notorious past, particularly her role in the agonising relationship between Charles and the late Princess of Wales. At the mid-April 2026 Diana Awards, the air was thick with unspoken accusations as Kate Middleton glided past the Queen without a single glance. As it currently stands in the eyes of Anne, the greatest threat the royal family faces is the Queen Consort, Camilla. This view of hers became known to the inner circle immediately after the confrontation she had with Queen Camilla at a private dinner. "Your presence here is a calculated insult to her memory," Anne had hissed, her voice a low vibration that silenced the room. From how intense the quarrel was, it became obvious that Camilla's influence had long declined in the eyes of the senior royals. While it is quite uncertain how far back the friction had been brewing, we were able to see just how deep the fractures within the family ran as Charles ascended the throne. But is it only Princess Anne that appears to stand in opposition to Camilla? Princess Kate Middleton doesn't approve of Camilla well, perhaps not quite so simply. Another vital member of the family who plays a significant role in this specific dynamic is Princess Kate. Known for her tranquil demeanour and diplomatic approach, Kate has largely avoided the controversy surrounding Camilla. However, her calculated silence may indicate her profound discomfort with the current situation. While she has not openly rebuked Camilla, her actions and lack of vocal support suggest that, like Anne, she may not fully accept Camilla's role. While the family holds values such as duty, service, and privacy dear, ancient tradition remains their most sacred principle. This unshakable bond to royal ancestry, upheld through observing tradition, reinforces their unique identity. However, a breach in traditional conditions could quickly ignite chaos within the palace walls. This is the exact constitutional crisis the royal family is navigating now. During the recent ceremonies at the mid-April Diana Awards, Kate failed to bow to Camilla, and this act is symbolic of much deeper tensions. Such calculated gestures, or the lack thereof, continue to fuel intense speculation and public controversy. It still boils down to the rigid requirements of tradition, as you see amongst the elite. Within the aristocracy, performing a bow or curtsy serves as a fundamental gesture of respect, yet its significance extends far beyond mere politeness. It functions as a solemn ritual and an unyielding duty, meticulously designed to illustrate the exact hierarchy of the Windsor bloodline within the monarchy. Theoretically, this implies that by observing the precise angle and depth of how these figures defer to one another, any onlooker should instantly decipher who holds a superior rank within the ancient royal apparatus. According to the ruthless royal correspondence at Tatler, Princess Kate Middleton's glacial actions during the mid-April 2026 Diana Awards were subjected to relentless forensic scrutiny. Many seasoned courtiers interpreted her deliberate decision to glide past without the traditional 3 steps back as a devastatingly clear signal of her profound personal reservations regarding Queen Camilla's elevated rank. The chilling silence that followed felt palpable, freezing the room as camera shutters clicked furiously to capture the undeniable public snub. Naturally, it remains imperative to acknowledge that no official palace communiques or press releases will ever explicitly confirm such explosive internal hostilities. Some desperately argued that her behaviour might simply align with a wider strategy of modernising the institution's archaic image and daily practices. By orchestrating a scenario where she completely turned her back to converse with another guest, she might have been ruthlessly balancing the weight of tradition with a fierce, independent practicality. Under strict constitutional protocol, Queen Camilla definitively outranks the Princess of Wales, making it a rigid expectation that she would perform a deep curtsy upon their initial greeting and yet another upon their departure. However, that expected display of reverence never materialised at all on that incredibly tense evening. Instead, Kate Middleton offered an expression of pure ice, refusing all eye contact as the Queen approached, an act that spoke volumes louder than any subtle nod ever could. In the eyes of a casual observer, this fleeting interaction might be easily missed amidst the glittering gowns, but within the sovereign ranks it is utterly inexcusable. Down the marble corridors, the rapid clicking of aides' heels echoed into the early hours as emergency crisis meetings were convened to manage the diplomatic fallout. One must remember that we are discussing Princess Kate Middleton, a woman whose marriage to Prince William and subsequent elevation to Princess of Wales has deeply entrenched her within the firm. She has possessed ample time to thoroughly master every single suffocating tradition and protocol of the British royal family. Whether absorbed during highly publicised state banquets or intensely private family gatherings at Windsor Castle, the suffocating weight of royal tradition has permanently enveloped her existence. Yet, there she stood at the Diana Awards, boldly withholding the most crucial display of submission and treating her stepmother-in-law as if she were entirely invisible. In absolute truth, this brazen sacrilege conveys a singular, devastating message to both the establishment and the viewing public. She simply will not accept that woman wearing the crown, no matter the cost, a senior aide whispered nervously to a colleague. It is highly probable that this entire humiliating scenario would have unfolded in a vastly different manner if the beloved late Princess of Wales had survived to become Queen Consort. The inescapable conclusion is that a significant faction of the inner circle harbours deep-seated animosity towards Queen Camilla, particularly considering the scandalous path she navigated to secure the throne. The haunting legacy of that patched-up marriage nearly 2 decades ago continues to cast a long, suffocating shadow over every interaction. Consequently, both aristocratic insiders and ordinary citizens cannot prevent themselves from agonising over a different reality. If only that tragic summer 29 years ago had never occurred, the crushing tension currently poisoning the atmosphere at Kensington Palace might be entirely non-existent. Taking all aspects into consideration, the dynamic between the feuding brothers might have remained solidly intact. Perhaps Prince Harry would never have abandoned his homeland, and the devastating CBS interview of 2026, alongside those explosive leaked emails, would never have materialised to destroy their familial bond. Assuming the Princess of Wales harbours this exact melancholic mindset, it perfectly elucidates the incredibly hostile manner in which she conducted herself. Nevertheless, the courtiers are striving desperately not to fabricate convenient excuses for Princess Kate's blatant rebellion. Fundamentally, she is expected to stand as an absolutely flawless, exemplary figurehead for everyone positioned behind her in the sacred line of succession. Therefore, it is entirely unacceptable for any senior member to prioritise their bitter personal feelings over the grave decisions pertaining to royal affairs. Instead, she is mandated to make excruciating personal sacrifices to guarantee that absolute law, order and dignity reign supreme within the walls of Windsor Castle. Across the estate, King Charles III sat up late, staring at the embers while nursing a dry martini, heavily burdened by the fractured allegiances threatening his reign. Whilst attempting to dissect the root causes of this deliberate neglect, one must not entirely discount the radical possibility that she has simply decided to abolish the curtsy from her personal repertoire altogether. Naturally, the global audience is aware that the British monarchical system has been undergoing a painful, structural metamorphosis during these recent years. With King Charles III at the helm, their ultimate objective is to meticulously ensure that their archaic operational methods somehow align with the unforgiving realities of the 21st century. Resulting from these seismic shifts, the public genuinely expects the royal family to quietly discard a few obsolete laws and ideologies. They must inevitably adopt newer, more palatable customs that allow them to seamlessly integrate into the modern way of life without sparking constant outrage. However, while they are frantically attempting to execute this delicate balancing act, the primary objective remains to ensure this perilous transition does not erode the major core values defining the institution. Having established that, it remains theoretically possible that the act of physical deference is simply one of those dusty traditions quietly being phased out from their daily routine. Princess Anne, poring over another internal memorandum while sipping her intensely strong Earl Grey, would certainly vehemently disagree with such catastrophic leniency. Evaluating the catastrophe from an external perspective, it becomes glaringly apparent that the general public harbours a drastically different reaction to Kate's defiant decision. In a ruthless era where the establishment is constantly pressured to adapt, many view her icy rebellion not as a failure, but as a triumph of personal integrity. In this era of modern sensibilities, many people find it invigorative when prominent royals step forward to challenge fossilized protocols. To these observers, such acts of defiance prove that there are indeed royals possessing independent minds rather than merely being ornamental figureheads. They refuse to be portrayed as silent puppets who have been force-fed centuries-old edicts and ancestral values. Ultimately, the public is drawn to what they perceive as relatable and exceptionally courageous within the contemporary royal house. On the contrary, the reality remains that a significant faction of traditionalists still staunchly believes in the sovereign system. These individuals deeply value the precise formality and hierarchical structure that traditional gestures are meant to represent. For them, the ritual of the curtsy is not merely about showing respect to one person, but about protecting centuries-old foundations. Consequently, they maintain that no royal, regardless of status, should consider themselves superior to the traditions that have endured for lifetimes. Instead, as their social influence within the firm expands, every member is expected to be increasingly diligent regarding their adherence to monarchical protocols. "We are not here to reinvent the wheel, we are here to guard it," Princess Anne remarked sharply during a private briefing at Windsor. She sat at a mahogany desk, her cup of intensely strong, sugarless Earl Grey cooling beside a mountain of urgent internal memoranda. Even with the immense expectations placed upon the Princess of Wales, it is evident that the friction between her and Camilla transcends simple etiquette. It is a profound conflict regarding how the institution might transform as the next decade unfolds. This subtle, icy transition will likely persist as the younger generation of royals continues to gain prominence. The speed of this evolution remains entirely dependent on the degree of acceptance found within the senior ranks of the family. Speaking of those who find it difficult to tolerate any new intruders within the corridors of Kensington Palace, Princess Anne has manifested a profound level of resentment toward Camilla. The shadow she casts is far too long for this house to ever feel clean, Anne whispered to a trusted aide as the clicking of heels signalled a crisis meeting. How did the atmosphere become so suffocating for the Queen? And what was her primary transgression in the unforgiving eyes of the Princess Royal? The aristocratic drama intensifies from this point as we delve into the most guarded and scandalous secrets. Queen Camilla, the current consort of the United Kingdom, has remained a figure shrouded in intense controversy for the majority of her public life. This is particularly attributed to her long-standing relationship with King Charles III and the devastating effect it had on his initial union with the late Princess of Wales. Throughout the passing years, she has encountered both fierce condemnation and calculated praise, yet her history continues to distort the public's view. The most notorious scandal involving Camilla remains her protracted affair with Charles while he was still bound to Princess Diana. This complex entanglement between Charles and Camilla commenced long before his high-profile marriage in more than 4 decades of shadow. Despite the union with Diana, the illicit affair persisted, creating a state of perpetual agony. This caused an extraordinary amount of pressure within the royal household and resulted in relentless global scrutiny. Diana herself famously identified Camilla as the third individual in her crumbling marriage, and the Daily Mail often framed her as the catalyst for the family's ruin. In the scandalous mid-90s admission, Charles finally confessed to the infidelity during a televised confession that shocked the nation. This bombshell admission of betrayal was a catastrophic event at that time, further incinerating both his and Camilla's standing in the eyes of the public. The reaction from the citizenry toward Camilla was overwhelmingly hostile, as many followers of Diana viewed her as the sole reason for the divorce of nearly 30 years past. For a vast number of years, Camilla remained a deeply unpopular figure throughout the British Isles. The public maintained a fierce, unwavering loyalty to the memory of the Princess of Wales. Camilla was frequently viewed as the interloper who had dismantled the most celebrated royal union in history. It was only following the tragic summer of 29 years ago that the public's anger began to marginally subside. Nevertheless, her personal reputation remained significantly damaged, and she was seldom seen in open view during the initial phase of her official life with Charles. As the connection between Charles and Camilla became more transparent, a great many people still regarded her as a deeply divisive personality. Even though she appeared at various state functions, her presence was often met with cold, mixed emotions from a public that felt protective of Diana's ghost. It was not until the union of nearly 20 years ago that the establishment made a concerted effort to formally acknowledge her role. At that time, Camilla was granted the title of Princess Consort rather than Queen Consort, as courtiers feared the public was not yet prepared to accept her as their queen. The tactical decision to designate her as Princess Consort was another major point of contention that fueled the ongoing debate regarding her status. When Charles finally ascended to the throne in the transition of 4 years past, it was officially declared that Camilla would indeed be known as Queen Consort. This specific move was met with a whirlwind of conflicting reactions across the Commonwealth. Loyalists of the late princess, who still harboured intense feelings about the past, voiced their deep anger at Camilla, assuming such a hallowed title. They argued vehemently that she could never be a legitimate or suitable successor to the legacy of Diana. Although the command to grant her the title of Queen was personally issued by Charles, it continued to ignite fierce arguments in publications like Tatler. For many individuals, particularly those who had idolised the late princess, the vision of Camilla as Queen was perceived as a final betrayal of a sacred memory. She is wearing a crown that was never intended for her. A leaked email from a former palace advisor stated bluntly just before the Diana Awards. Over the course of time, Camilla has attempted to carve out her own unique trajectory within the firm, frequently prioritising her public service. She has championed numerous significant causes, including the preservation of classical arts and supporting those battling chronic anxiety and depression. Furthermore, she has focused on aid for the isolated elderly and the restoration of crumbling architectural heritage, building a new profile as a patron of charity. As a dedicated patron of various new initiatives, her haunting history has undeniably continued to cast a suffocating shadow over her daily actions, while harsh critics remain deeply sceptical of her true role and underlying motives. She is merely painting over a rotting canvas, Princess Anne observed coldly from the confines of the green drawing room. Throughout recent years, Queen Camilla has tirelessly worked to be perceived as a genuinely positive figure within the aristocratic fold. Her newly adopted charity work, particularly her heavy focus on funding support for the isolated, elderly and aggressively restoring ruined architectural heritage, has marginally helped to improve her fragile public image. She has also strategically worked to distance herself from the highly controversial aspects of her dark history, choosing instead to focus entirely on her philanthropic efforts and demanding public duties. However, despite these calculated efforts, there remain formidable factions who continue to view her with intense scepticism, especially those courtiers who feel that the institution's history regarding the beloved princess has been unceremoniously swept under the rug. The unbearable tension reached a boiling point at the mid-April 2026 Diana Awards, where Princess Kate Middleton deliberately turned her back on the Queen, making it clear that the ghosts of the past refused to be silenced. In addition to the crushing real-life controversies, Queen Camilla's image has been ruthlessly shaped by her portrayals in the modern media. Particularly, highly controversial streaming documentaries released in early 2026 have sensationally dramatised her illicit affair with King Charles III and its devastating impact on the late princess, continually dragging the scandal back to the forefront of global public discussion. These relentless cinematic portrayals have frequently depicted her as an intensely manipulative figure, which has naturally only compounded the public's deeply hostile and mixed feelings about her presence. The frantic clicking of aides' heels can frequently be heard echoing down the marble corridors late at night as emergency crisis teams scramble to mitigate the latest media disaster orchestrated by pages like Tatler. Her unforgiving portrayal in the press has often been a massive source of internal tension, with loyal critics desperately claiming that it does not fully capture her extensive charitable work or the reformed person she has supposedly become. They only wish to see the villain they have maliciously created, King Charles III reportedly sighed to his closest equerry. Nevertheless, the stark reality of more than 4 decades of darkness simply cannot be ignored. The relentless societal focus on her clandestine relationship with the monarch and that tragic summer 29 years ago essentially ensures that Queen Camilla remains an incredibly divisive figure. As the officially crowned Queen Consort, she has diligently worked to establish herself as a vital, irreplaceable member of the royal family. Yet her tarnished legacy remains inextricably linked to her past transgressions. Public opinion regarding her reign continues to be heavily influenced by the scandalous history of her relationship with King Charles III, as well as her undeniable role in the catastrophic breakdown of his previous marriage. That earth-shattering confession in the mid-90s still echoes loudly whenever she attempts to step out onto the public stage. Conversely, with the passage of time, some observers have gradually come to accept Queen Camilla's role within the royal family, reluctantly recognising that she has slowly grown into her commanding position. During his frequent sleepless nights, King Charles III often sits alone at Kensington Palace, nursing a freezing dry martini as he ponders the immense silent sacrifices she has made for the crown. While the furious controversies surrounding her history will undoubtedly continue to persist, it is abundantly clear that she has played a rather crucial role in shaping the fragile modern monarchy. Her ongoing story is fundamentally one of stubborn redemption and immense perseverance, as she has tirelessly worked to shed her controversial past and construct a secure new future for herself within the royal family. Despite the unyielding controversies and quiet palace boycotts, she has steadfastly continued to serve her royal duties and heavily support her chosen charitable causes, making her an unavoidable key figure in the British monarchy today. Queen Camilla's life and her subsequent role within the royal family have been permanently marked by severe controversy, spanning from her illicit affair to her ultimate elevation as Queen Consort. Consequently, following that patched-up marriage nearly 2 decades ago, her ultimate legacy remains profoundly complicated and deeply contested. Princess Anne, steadily sipping her notoriously strong, sugarless Earl Grey amid stacks of restrictive internal memos, ensures that this complicated legacy is never easily forgotten. Still, her unwavering dedication to charity work and her elevated position within the royal family clearly demonstrate that she has worked incredibly hard to reshape her damaged image over an extended period of time. The bitter controversies surrounding her presence will highly likely continue to boil, but they are undeniably part of a much larger story of a resilient woman who has navigated a remarkably complex and frequently treacherous path. Adding to this treacherous path the explosive CBS interview from early 2026 by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has only intensified the suffocating pressure cooker environment. What are your personal thoughts on this escalating aristocratic warfare? Do you genuinely believe that Princess Anne possesses entirely justifiable grounds to mount such a fierce rebellion against Queen Camilla? Please let us know exactly what you think regarding this explosive dynamic in the comments section below. Remember to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive behind-the-scenes royal coverage. Furthermore, please click the following video currently shown on your screen, as you will undoubtedly enjoy our next deep dive into the monarchy's hidden secrets.